Hi, I'm Jillian Lauren, and I am the only journalist who interviewed America's most prolific serial killer. To really grasp the sadism of somebody who gets their enjoyment from not just the strangling. I mean, he would strangle them and bring them back to life. He would strangle them and give them CPR. He would strangle them again and again, just to see the helplessness and the fear in them. And he had this whole kind of routine, like vaudeville routine with me, where he said, are you coming to visit me at Rick's Cafe, right from Casablanca? He said, I ordered a violin player for you this weekend, and, I've got one of those, checkered tablecloths, and, will you sing me as time goes by? And I was just like, you motherfucker. Right. I want, and then, the FBI would be like, what kind of a slut are you? Like singing lullabies to this monster. And I'm like, I'm just the kind of slut who's keeping him calm and confessing to you.
Jillian Lauren, so excited to have you here in the studio with us. And I was telling you before we started that I'm such a huge fan of your writing.
Thank you very much.
I mean, your book, Everything I Ever Wanted, was one of first of all, one of the first books I really fell in love with as a mom. After I became a mother, I fell in love with that book. If you haven't read it, you've got to read this book. It's just like exquisitely written. It really is.
Thank
all of
you.
it. And so when I decided that I was going to author a book or try to, I had a book proposal.
There is no try.
There is no try. Well, well, try to get published. Try to
I
get
have
published.
Teenage boys.
Yes.
Everything is Yoda.
That's right. But when I decided I was going to, take that journey, I used your book. You have to put in comparison books. They call them comps for style and for subject matter, et cetera, et cetera. And I used Everything I Ever Wanted as
an honor.
Oh my goodness! And I was telling you,
I mean, as an author, as a fellow artist, like, what could you want to hear more than that?
Yeah. I loved it, and it got me a nice big fat book deal. So, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes,
you wrote a good book too, honey.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah. I'm sure my comp was not your.
Hey, you know
your
what?
Big selling point, and
you never know.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait to read it myself.
Yes, you'll be going home with a copy of Stash My Life in Hiding. Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to
great title.
Thank you.
I'm already sold.
Yeah, it's like, it looks like Valley of the Dolls, the cover with all the pills on it. Mm-hmm. So, it's in that vein. All right. So, Hun, this is the Only One in the Room podcast.
I've heard that.
My name is Laura Cathcart Robbins. I'm your host and the creator, but I'm never the only one in the room because, as usual, there are lots of people in the room, including you.
Yes, I am.
Scott Slaughter, who is my producer, co-host, executive producer, co-host.
Get it right.
And Hun.
Hi, honey.
Hi, Hun. All that to say, what were you going to say?
I
want to steal that, but now
I was just telling Jillian that's our little shtick.
It is our little shtick.
But
yeah,
she kind of jumped all over it.
People are kind of like, "Do you still have to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of do." Because
people grin every time we do it. Everybody's like, "Oh,
it's good. It's good." You know what? They're classics.
Yes.
There's a reason they're classics.
So Jillian Lauren, if you have been under a rock and you don't know everything about her, she's a writer. She's a storyteller. She is an adoption advocate. Are you still an adoption advocate?
Of course.
Yes.
More so than ever.
Good.
And, we're not in a position to adopt right this second because now my children are 11 and 16. And all of a sudden we're like, ooh, freedom.
Right.
Freedom.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
All of a sudden they're like, can we just do our own thing? And you're like, not be suggesting activities. And I'm like, yes. Actually, I can
please.
Very much not suggest activities for you.
My boys I have two boys as well. So, but they're older. They're 24 and 26.
Right. Does it come back around and then you're just pretty much it's like a toddler again?
It's they're still really close, but
that's cool.
I'm also enjoying the freedom, the fruit of the freedom.
But we stay certified foster parents, and I do a lot of advocacy work in that world. And also, I just think by being visible, our family is, it's like you don't have to try so hard. Not every single thing has to be about we're this transracial adoptive family. Like we're a family,
right,
and we're visible. It just happens to be like the transracial piece of it makes it so like we make a visual impact when we walk into a room.
You do.
People say like, "Where's that child's mother?" and things like that, and so that by just sort of like telling our story, warts and all, and I mean that's what I did in Everything You Ever Wanted, and it's so wild because people want to talk for the most part about the. Can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean I have the slutty fuck the prince book, and then I have the like novel I wrote that in graduate school that I couldn't sell, which is why I wrote the slutty fuck the prince book, and then I sold them both together.
If you say that title again, we're gonna have to talk more about the slutty fuck the prince.
Well,
we will.
I
jumped into the parenting memoir because that's an obvious leap, and then did the serial kill memoir, but I picked up, I was just like getting the books together to put into a package for you, right? And I opened a book, a copy of Everything You Ever Wanted to sign it. And it was already signed. I had signed it to T. And I don't remember when I did it or what I was thinking, but I decided obviously not to give it to him. But the inscription said, my son, I always wrote this for you to read it. And I hope it makes you proud. Love, Mom. And I went and left it in his room.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Like, I just think maybe he's 16. He knows all the stuff that's in there. Like, he knows all the stories, about him hanging from the chandeliers and throwing the Christmas ornaments against the wall and the biting and the, I mean, he knows that when he got kicked out of school.
Well, and...
so I actually just gave my son that book.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that.
He's not going to read it, but,
Well, yeah. I mean, people always ask me what my kids think of my book. I'm like, they're never going to read that book.
No, they haven't read it yet, have they?
They will not read it.
But he likes it, and that's him on the cover, so.
Oh, it is him, is it?
But their girlfriends read the book.
Their girlfriends did read the book.
They do?
They did,
yeah.
yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Mine did. Their girlfriends read it, and I'm sure parts were read out loud, You were so kind. I was saying Everything I Ever Wanted is Everything You Ever Wanted. So I know this book, but I got the title mixed up. So thank you for not correcting me.
I didn't catch it.
Oh, good. So that's actually why I contacted you in the first place. White mom, black kids. I connected with the story, but I thought that would be a great story to tell. When I contacted you, we talked on the phone, and you said, I have a book coming out that might be like the story to talk about on your podcast.
Right.
And you were not yet finished with the book, and I'm going to give you the title. It is Behold the Monster, Confronting America's Most Prolific Serial Killer and Uncovering the Women Society Forgot.
Right.
That's a really important piece of your title that I think a lot of people don't say, the uncovering the women that society forgot. I mean,
it's long. I mean, it's the subtitle, so I understand why, but I hope that it comes through.
Yeah. Well, it's
it comes
impactful.
through in the writing. It comes through anyway. So
yeah,
it's in there even if people don't say it because it's long.
But it's often forgotten.
Yeah.
That it's not just about the tabloidness of sitting across from a serial killer. True crime is, it's money, right? people want to know about serial killers and what makes them that way, and they want to know the details about the kills, and they want the murders rather. But the truth is that this was someone who preyed on women who society doesn't care about in general, right?
Yeah.
Their friends care about them, their families care about them, but society sometimes, but society doesn't.
You know, it's a chicken egg situation.
Yeah. Tell me.
Time, and you know, I mean, how do you wind up bare-assed out on Figueroa Street? You know, I mean, maybe you didn't have a family who cared about you.
Right.
Or, you know, maybe South Central LA was decimated, you know, by crack, by the FBI, you know, who like just in their COINTEL program went and undermined Black leadership in the community, you know, and the Black Panthers turned into the Crips and the Bloods, and the first SWAT teams in the country were used on, you know, in the streets of South Central, you know, paramilitary tactics used in urban center. And, you know, what had been a middle-class Black community was also divided by freeways.
Yes.
Which traditionally, like, breaks up community structures. And the Boeing industry.
Yeah.
Where, you know, a lot of working-class Black families came out and worked here, you know, that sort of started to fail. And then in the 80s, we wound up with at least seven active serial killers. I mean, within a 10-mile radius at the same time. And women of color, addicts, vulnerable women were turning up in dumpsters every morning in the 80s. And remember, there was no DNA fingerprinting.
Right.
Until 1991. You know, at much less a federal mandated program for it. So, you know, these victims were referred to as less dead. I mean, there were ways that cops would call in a homicide, a 187, right? You know, we have a 187 on 5th and Main, and it's an NHI, no humans involved. Or it's a no one.
Right. So literally no one.
It's a no one.
Yeah.
There's a homicide, and it's a no one.
So you're setting the table, or you're telling us how the table was set,
right,
for him to come in, Sam Little,
and he did this. I mean, this was happening. LA is not the only city,
right?
You know, that this happened in, you know, like largely segregated, you know, and that he says, you know, you stay in your part of town, I stayed in my part of town, I stayed in the shadows, and people thought I was a petty thief, and I picked the victims no one cared about. He said to me, you know, I said I had my own hard times. You know, I had my own hard times with men, with drugs. You know, I'm glad I didn't run into you one night.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I would never kill anyone like you. I don't care. I don't kill any senators or governors. Like, I'm sure I'm a senator or governor, but any senators or governors or New York journalists or fancy white ladies. He told me I look like a librarian who look like librarians.
Right.
He said it'd be all over the newspapers the next day.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, he picked his victims because they were already less human.
Yeah. It's terrifying, the strategy that was involved. And then, so tell us, because I know the story, tell people who don't know who he is and how it is that you came to see him.
So Samuel Little is a sort of I mean, maybe now not, but was an underpublicized serial killer who in 2014, LAPD, due to a grant from the Department of Justice, a team from their cold case special section headed by Detective Mitzi Roberts, the very famous Detective Mitzi Roberts, who is has a fictional character based on her, Renee Ballard, written by Michael Connolly. The show, the Bosch spinoff show, is they're about to start shooting. So
that's so cool.
I know. I met a real rock star of a detective who got me.
Yeah.
First interview, she got me. And, you know, they were able to connect through this grant where they ran old evidence, able to connect Sam to 3 murders in Los Angeles in the 80s. Guadalupe Apodaca, Carol Alford, and Audrey Nelson. And then there were a few living victims, 3 living victims still who had survived his attacks. And he had even done time for some of them. But, you know, he pled down to kidnapping or assault and battery and not attempted murder, and did 18 months, then got out and went and killed 2 women that first night. And so in order to establish pattern evidence, they had these 3 witnesses who he had assaulted, and then they had the 3 DNA matches, 3 DNA hits, and then all they had to do was find him, except he was a transient at that point. He had no, you know, he wasn't registered anywhere, and eventually they got him through, he had a Walmart card where his Social Security checks were deposited, and they found it was used near this homeless shelter in Louisville,
Kentucky.
And I mean, there was a cop, young cop near there, who had like seen him, lost him, and was just like, "Give me a chance, I'm gonna go get him." And they went. The U.S. Marshals apprehended him there. He went to Texas first.
Right.
He was extradited to Texas first because there was a warrant there. Then extradited to L.A. And they still needed to build a case. Just because you have a case-to-case match, right, with prostitutes. I mean, they have multiple genetic profiles on them often. And, you know, they were able to get him convicted. 3 consecutive life sentences. But what Mitzi told me was, when I interviewed her about something else entirely, procedural, another book I was working on, I'll work on it again someday. I put it all aside for this because she told me that she knew, and so did many other detectives across the country, that he was good for many more murders than the 3 they put him away for. They wanted to get him off the street. For all they knew, he could still be murdering. Right. That's their job. So,
well, let me just ask you, because one of the things I was surprised about, and that's everything you just told me is fascinating, that you were going to write a novel, right? It was going to be a novel that you were doing research for.
Yeah, a mystery novel.
And then you end up with this woman interviewing her, and then she gives you basically something that
around.
You put your life aside because it's so compelling. It calls you.
Well, I mean, she said, you know, I mean, how many families will never know, how many victims' names, you know, will always be buried. You know, how many Jane Does are out there. And and for me, I think the thought that came to my mind was, I mean, a number of obvious things, but also, like, if somebody doesn't ask him, if somebody doesn't get this story, I mean, if it's true, then this man is the last person to have witnessed these women's lives, you know, and, you know, this brutal stranger who just stole their chance at anything, and the ripple effect of violence in their families, right,
you
know, for generations, And, and I got fired up.
You did.
I got really fired up.
Well, you open your book with your own experience with violence, right? You were almost strangled. It sounds the way you write it like you were dying.
Yeah.
In that moment. Can you describe a little bit of that for us?
Sure. I mean, it's a prologue,
yeah.
And I never mean to be reductive and say, like A plus B equals C. I had several experiences with domestic violence because that's often how domestic violence works.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's hard to explain that, when you're raised with violence as love, you tend to replicate that. Yeah. Even if you're trying not to.
You're bonded to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I had a boyfriend in San Francisco and it was abusive. I had been trying to leave. I was like trying to get my BA for like the 19th time at the 19th school. It was a great school. And I was at Mills College in Oakland. Yeah. My friends became more and more concerned as a sort of like typical behavior escalated. And it turned from, just sort of your regular like theatrical, college relationship into, I was getting thrown against a wall. And so I left him and I made a plan to move to Los Angeles. Hello, everybody. Here I still am.
Here she is, yes.
And I had a storage space, and I just got ready, and I did it all in a morning. And he wouldn't leave. He sat there and watched me, put the glasses in boxes, and and I describe it. I remember just. Like I turned around to put something away in the shelf and the next thing I knew I was like waking up.
Yeah.
It was like the world
you were coming
went.
to.
Yeah, I was coming to. It was like the world was like a slot machine for a half a second. And then I was coming to and he was straddling me and I was on the floor and I felt like I couldn't talk. Mm-hmm. Like in the book, I think I said it. It was like a tennis ball on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can, but whatever. You can instead you can see this beautiful necklace.
That's right.
That we have designed, yes. And it is called Pen and Sword.
Pen and Sword.
And it's about, my relationship with Sam, which started with words, and
I like that segue back to
it was a fight for justice the whole time.
Yeah.
So, it's meaningful to me that this necklace,
it's beautiful.
lies on the, where I was clawing at my throat because I couldn't talk.
Yes, exactly.
And here I am and the story's mine.
Yeah.
And
so Jess, thank you for sharing that because that is, I don't want to gloss over it because it's an event that a lot of people, either they might be experiencing that in their lives, or it might be in the past for them. They may think it's never going to happen to them. And
it's so shameful. And also, we have such mixed messaging. And I really try to focus on, there are safety. There are actual things you can do to keep yourself aware and safe, and it's not about, third wave feminism or whatever wave feminism we're in, or, my friend and her sister, so this famous case in Ohio just happened. Her sister was in an abusive relationship. My friend Jess's Twitter handle at the time was, don't tell me what to do. Right? Mm-hmm. And she went to Ohio to move her sister out while the boyfriend was at work or something. I, would have said that there would be some other choices, precautions, things rather than storming in like that, he showed up and held them hostage and shot them both in the face and killed them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It's my friend. It's my son's best friend's stepmom. I watched my son, my 10-year-old son, like stand next to his friend at his stepmom's funeral, and who just got shot in the face by one more murderous son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be pragmatic about that with people, and and then also reach for the humanity in people as well.
Well, and that was the interesting thing about your book and the documentary, which Scott and I both watched, which was you seemed to be reaching into him for the humanity, but not necessarily his humanity. You were reaching for the women whose stories he held. Right. Right? That's so you're going into him. He's the source of these stories, and when he goes, which he did, he died in 2020. He was the only source for the way these stories ended, right?
That's so well put. What a beautiful observation. That's exactly right. He was a great storyteller. Yeah. So when he described these women, he had a certain awful misogynistic way of doing women's voices and how snotty they were, and he had a thing where he would toss his hair and turn his nose up, and those bitches weren't fit to lick his feet, how dare they. And yet he remembered such, everyone says he has a photographic memory. This is one of the sort of urban legends about him, and I'm like, kind of. Also, there's really no such thing. It's a little bit of a myth of its own. There's only really been one case at Harvard where maybe there was a woman who had an actual photographic memory. Really, it's just a very good memory. Right. Not perfect. There are certain ways I figured out that he was often wrong, like lengths, like distances that he drove. Right. That became very important when it came to solving cases, because what jurisdiction you're in is going to be where the case was filed. And there is a very big problem in this country with a lack of communication. Between jurisdictions. Still. Yeah. Still, our VICAP program is not mandatory, and that's... VICAP is the Violent Criminal Apprehension System. It's an FBI program, but it's voluntary, and our police departments, when people say, defund the police, I understand the sentiment, but, you can't ever... a soundbite never really sums everything up. Because, okay, defund the police... Well, what's the first thing that's going to go? It's the sex crimes division. It gets folded into the gang division. Right. It already happens here in LA. Wow. Sex crime division gone. And,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's just maybe we think about allocating resources in ways, that are important to the community, that law enforcement protects and serves, rather than just, this contentious relationship.
I was really struck by the kind of Hannibal Lecter Clarice-ness of the relationship, because he seemed to want to entice you. Right. He was, and I still don't really understand, and I hope you can explain this, why you? And I mean,
people ask me this a lot.
Yeah. So just to set the scene, he had been in prison for how long when you?
4 years.
4 years. And he was looking at how many murders at that time?
3. Only 3.
And how many has he been, are attributed to him now?
93 confessions.
93.
63 have been closed.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I mean, so...
Have been cleared in one way, either,
It was the tip of the iceberg.
By exceptional means or by, by plea. Yeah.
So you were walking into a situation that you knew could be worse than it was, or no?
Well, I mean, I sort of hoped it. It would be worse than it was, and then I'd be able to crack it.
Right.
My intention was like, to kind of take on this rather, dramatic, I mean, there's no like big secret that I like adrenaline, that I'm attracted to, I'm fascinated by the criminal mind, and, I always want to see worlds that I don't know anything about. And a men's maximum security prison definitely counted. I suppose if you don't count a couple of ex-boyfriends, but I'd never been to one.
But he had to invite you, not invite you. But
I reached out to him, and then he had to like apply for me to be able to go visit him. Now I think it's much easier. Mm-hmm. But for instance, I unintentionally upset another artist the other day who called me in and said, I walked into the prison to try to talk to this prisoner, and they were like, you're a writer, and and you have to go through the proper channels, so go away. And she's like, so how do I do it? And I said, okay, here's how you do it. You go buy 5 of my books right now, give them to your 5 hottest friends, tell them it's favorite book you've ever read, and then I'll tell you how you do it. And she called a mutual friend of mine and was just like, oh my gosh, she's just like a horrible, wretched psycho. I was like, no, I was trying to explain to you how you do it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't saying you really have to go out and buy 5 of my books. And also don't ask me for my journalistic secrets. Don't ask me for my secret sauce. But I'm telling you that it's a transaction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
so you're letting
it's
her
not
know.
all like girl power.
Right.
Let me tell you how to do this. Like, no, I just told you how.
Mm-hmm.
I told you are in a transactional relationship. You're bargaining all the time. You walk in, I walked in, looked at them and said, he's my friend. I had never done this before. I just knew to say I wasn't a writer.
Right. This is what you're telling the guards and security.
How you know little.
Yeah.
I said, we're friends. He's like, all right. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, we are. We're friends. Your friends, my ass.
Right.
Right. And then, but they let me in, because I held it down. They can't really, what are they going to do?
Right.
Like, right that minute, they had a bunch of,
But if you had said you were a writer, what do you think would have been?
Well, you would have to go through the proper channels.
see.
I was very shady. I don't pretend I'm not. I say it on the book. But the thing is, that, I was held to account later when they made a documentary about my work on this. Joe Berlinger, who, is probably the premier director in the true crime documentary space. He did the Paradise Lost series, made a documentary about sort of my involvement with this story. And it's called Confronting a Serial Killer. It's streaming kind of everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, were you going to say something else? Because I have another question for you. But
go for it.
Okay. You brought him Little Debbie's at some point. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Little Debbie's are those little cakes.
Little Debbie's. Yeah. And then it was honey wings. It turned out to be honey garlic wings.
And you're able to bring those in, huh?
No, vending machines.
Vending machines,
and
right.
My friend Sasha, my dear friend Sasha, may his name be a blessing, had served time in that prison, and was sober. And one of our dearest friends gave me all the whole skinny, and he said, do not show up without quarters, because, you're only allowed to bring in a clear bag, with a key fob and your prescription glasses and a prescription.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And quarters or dollars for the vending machines, but really quarters, because some of them don't take the dollars, and then
quarters are a commodity. Yeah.
And only the visitors can use the microwaves, but there's you get
so you can
food,
microwave like burritos and stuff for him.
Mm-hmm. And I would I would like set his food up for him and open his Coke for him. And
So what's the setup? You're at a table, a communal table?
yes. So we're in the, and this surprised me too. So yes, you're right. It was very much, I think this is what I meant to come around to about the documentary, is that, you know, Silence of the Lambs, one of my favorite movies from the beginning of time. I was actually at the premiere because one of my mentors in the theater was in it, Ron Vaughter.
Okay.
Made sure that all the interns at the theater company got tickets for the premiere. Such a beautiful man. Anyway, I had always just been fascinated with that movie, you know, and just like with her gumption, and that, like really it could go either way at any moment of that movie.
Yes.
That you actually believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the part that's terrifying. And how alone she is, even though she has all this departmental support and or manipulation or whatever. And so, you know, I sort of had this in my mind, but I know movies aren't life. You know, no one gets to go into some like creepy stone dungeon and get Anthony Hopkins behind a piece of glass, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of did in my own way. I mean, it wasn't like that. We were in the family visiting room, which was in many ways creepier. You know, I mean, there were like kids on tables next to us. There's just plastic tables. We were always at the same one, right in front of the guard station, with like 900 cameras facing us. Wow. 19, I was told by one of the sheriff's deputies when I got in trouble at one point. 19 cameras. I'm looking at you. I was like, it's a little, but okay.
Wait,
really,
what'd
you need
get
19
in trouble
angles?
For?
I mean, there's so many conversations and so many moving pieces of this story, and much of it didn't make it into the book, you know. There have been many victims who call me sure that Sam was their attacker. Mm-hmm. They saw him in the paper, they recognize him, you know, and I have as complete a timeline as there is of his, right, you know, his arrest record, you know, where he was, what cars he was driving, and what years, victim list. And, you know, they didn't get response from their local law enforcement. And so they get in touch with me. And most of them, I'm able to say, you know, I listened to their story and I'm able to say, like, I'll do what I can. Let me check. Mm-hmm. And I could say, no, you know, he was actually incarcerated in Maryland at that time. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that you're sure it's him.
But it can't be.
It isn't.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not your fault. It's not, you know, it's not your memory. It's not your fault. Like, you want answers. And so this is the only one I can give you. I'm sorry it can't be. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. But it's not.
Right.
You know, there were two that I couldn't completely rule out. And one of them, you know, she and I just became friends. And, you know, there were certain parts of the MO, like Sam never really used a knife or a weapon. You know, his hands were his weapon. That was like, you know, it was sex for him. He didn't want anything in between him and a neck. So there was a knife in her story. I was like, you know, he didn't generally carry a weapon. But otherwise, I could place him in, you know, Florida, where she was at the time. He wasn't incarcerated. Like, you know, there was a description of a car that was very much like the car he was driving. So she said, please, will you take these pictures of me from that time and put them in front of him and see if he recognizes me. And I was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And anyway, you know, I said, okay, I will. So you're allowed to bring pictures. You're allowed to bring like 10 photographs in with you. You must also bring them out with you. And they can't be porn or gang related or have maps on them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. No maps, no porn, no gangs. But other than that, you know, so I brought the pictures. I put them in front of him. He said, I never saw that woman before. And he's like, and I'd never go for someone like that. You know, for the same reason that
I
told you a million times. Yeah. Exactly. You know, that wouldn't have been my choice. And when I was coming out, one of the sheriff's deputies was like, why are you showing him these pictures? I see. And they like had me in a room, like a side room, ready to be like, you know, we're going to suspend your visiting privileges. You don't understand, you know, he gets off on this. He's like, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I totally don't understand.
Right.
Oh my gosh. You know, and they were like, who's this a picture of? And I was like, it's a friend of mine. You know, and they were just like, you know, he's a pervert. He's a, you know, you don't get it. And I was like, thank you so much for explaining that to me. You know.
So you knew it was risky, but you did it because you wanted to see it.
She asked me to. And, you know, I mean, there was a time, you know, near the end of his life where, I mean, he was starting to get rattled. There had been 93 confessions that, you know, he was 78 years old when I met him, and, you know, and he was clear as a bell, and they just knew. I mean, he had, you know, diabetic, half a foot, pacemaker, you know, like there was only so much time.
Right.
So there were detectives coming in, a Texas Ranger James Holland, you know, and the original detectives from the LAPD who worked the case, Rick Jackson, Tim Marcia, Mitzi Roberts, Beth Silverman, one of our unbelievable deputy district attorneys here who's prosecuted pretty much every serial killer in Los Angeles. And, you know, and they all had detectives from jurisdictions all across the country come in with their cold cases and talk to Sam. So by the very end, he was starting to get a little rattled.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, you know, some of the victims were the same victim. There's like one in particular that I think that there are two confessions, and I think it might be the same victim.
I see. Yeah.
You know, so, and of course I'm still working all these cases sort of, but Sam Little and his, you know, and his murderous rampage is not my entire life.
No.
You know, it's a story that taught me a tremendous amount and gave me like great skills.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and also
it was a really tough learning curve, and and gave me this passion really, and my sort of raison d'etre ultimately.
I would say it also gave a lot of people closure, your experience with him. Yeah. So I want to, we're coming up against time, believe it or not. I want to ask you two more things.
Okay.
Just going back quickly to Silence of the Lambs, the tension in that was that Clarice might be in physical danger, but we also understood the psychological danger, right? He was getting into her head.
Right.
Right. And then so Sam Little was an incredibly violent serial killer. Yeah. Cold cocking people, raping them, like murderously, strangling them. How did you, because when you came in, we were talking briefly about how it was impacting you at home during this time.
My whole family.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, when I went in with this sort of, Clarice Starling, Hannibal Lecter, like, you know, I mean, or go Dostoevsky, you know, the Grand Inquisitor has always been like one of my favorite things. And, you know, I'm good at getting people I like people's secrets. So, I mean, genuine interest, and people want to tell their secrets. So, you know, it was much more like that relationship than I ever thought it would be. Like I said, I know that, you know, CSI is not how they do forensics. right? Like cops hate CSI because it contaminates jury pools because they think they they think that they can just go like boop boop beep beep boom in some like fake machine and that like you get their DNA profile like not like it takes 2 years to get a profile back sometimes. Wow. But in any case, it really was. It had that that quid pro quo. That was it. I mean, it really was. People had a lot of judgment, and people always have a lot of judgments. It's sort of like my thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just like, it's my brand. People judge me. I take the judgments for everyone else. I'll take your bullets.
Yes.
I'll take all the slut bullets for you. But that I would sing to Sam. He wanted me to like sing him songs from, the sadism of it. It's so like, to really grasp the sadism of somebody who gets their enjoyment from not just the strangling. I mean, he would strangle them and bring them back to life. He would strangle them and give them CPR. He would strangle them again and again just to see the helplessness and the fear in them. And he had this whole kind of routine, like vaudeville routine with me, where he said, are you coming to visit me at Rick's Cafe, right from Casablanca? He said, I ordered a violin player for you this weekend, and I've got one of those checkered tablecloths, and will you sing me as time goes by? And I was just like, you motherfucker. Right. Like I want, and then, the FBI would be like, what kind of a slut are you? Like singing lullabies to this monster. And I'm like, I'm just the kind of slut who's keeping him calm and confessing to you.
That's right.
I'm keeping him happy is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
He's asking me for this and I'm giving it to him. Right. But like, I'm like, you know what he was doing there? I mean, ruining something, right? Like he knows. He said, I don't hate women. I love women. I worship women. He knows he doesn't have the capacity to love, right? Like this is like one of the all-time great movies about love and sacrifice, right? And so he takes like the song that, is actually kind of a depressing song.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
It's like a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. Right. Fundamental things apply, right? And it's like you didn't invent love, right? Anyway, so it's like ruin that song for people forever.
Yeah.
Everyone listening to that confession,
just listen to it.
Oh.
Yeah, but so at home,
so. It started to do the same thing in my house. I mean, if I'm like having this transaction, this relationship that involves like this emotional piece, right? And you can't fake it. Like you don't get I'm not like, oh, I took a kickboxing class, I'm going to get in the ring with the champ, right? Like I'm a pretty good liar. I'm not a psychopath, right? So I don't get in the ring and lie with him. So it really started to mess me up, and how deep I dug into the victims' stories, how responsible I began to feel for them, and like there would be birds outside my window or stars in the sky, and I would just like think like how many of them, like how many birds, how many stars, how many victims are still out there.
Everything was like representing what this case meant.
And, and then there's conflict always. And, I'm never perfect. I said some choice words to the FBI at one point and never stopped apologizing for it. But I'm still close with many of the families of the victims.
Yeah.
And I don't know about closure, like you said, but I do know that they feel a sense of justice and at least they have an answer.
Yeah.
Alice, which is the case that I solved, like from top to bottom. It was really like I worked it like a detective. I mean, I did it with the help and guidance of Rick Jackson, who's like the real Harry Bosch, retired detective, one of my mentors, who would be like, no, you got to think like it's 87. What's his blood type? And like, you should know that,
Right. Or keeping you on your toes.
Yeah. But then he'd also be like, don't lose hope now, kiddo. You're not even halfway there yet.
So you were able to take that case to a point.
It's solved. I mean, It's a closed case. I brought it to the Long Beach police. I figured out that when he said he was going to the beach, he wasn't going west.
That's
he was going south.
I remember that. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy.
Like, toward the beach. Yeah. And he would get really mad. And I was like, what is he talking about, toward the beach?
That was a really pivotal moment for you. Like, it was like a light bulb went on.
I said, I realized that, this whole, people love an easy narrative and also a sensational one. This idea that he remembers every single detail isn't true. Close. He remembers certain things really well. But then there was like a turn that he took, especially when he was on crack.
Right.
And his memories became addled. Yeah. So I started to figure out where he was going wrong.
Yeah.
Rather than when he was right. And that's how I solved Alice.
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like the confidence with which he says it is like he does remember every single detail.
Right.
So you had to go in and see where the holes were, because everything else would make sense up to a point.
Yeah. And he, like, by the end, I believe he was doing his best. Like, he was messing with me in the beginning.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I lived up to my promise to him. Yeah. The ultimate promise I gave to him is that he wouldn't die alone. Mm-hmm. I was like, if you give me this story and only me, because like I'm an ambitious, like I said I'm writing a story, because he was still declaring his innocence. I said I'm interested in violence. I'm writing a story about violent behavior. I think you have a very interesting story to tell, and this is what I offer. You're not going to die alone in this shithole.
And he didn't.
But I mean, I was still working on the book. But yeah, he was the last 10 days. Died of COVID, supposedly. And the last 10 days, he was, unreachable. But before that,
you were, I
talked to him almost every day.
So
you were asking about my family, they started to have the questions that everyone else had, like, how can you be doing this? Mm-hmm. How can you prioritize this over us? Yeah. Right? Like, okay, fine. These women that you're fighting for, and and you miss every soccer game. Mm-hmm. And also we have to hear this disgusting. It became like during COVID, everyone's in the house all the time. Right. And I recorded him on speakerphone. So all of a sudden, Sam's voice, that voice that gets like, it's like there are 3 totally different voices. My kids could be passing by the door, and my husband was like, it's disgusting. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
And this is ruinous to everything it touches. And I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I'm worried about you. I was having night terrors, and like sleepwalking and post-traumatic stress disorder, like was like on fire, hypervigilance, insomnia. I couldn't walk anywhere. I wore a like crossbody bag around my own home. Because I had to have my phone, a recorder, a notebook on me at all times, because I couldn't miss a phone call.
Wow.
And that kind of vigilance makes you nuts. So, there was a great rift in my family, and we're still working it out. But I feel like it made us get deeper and more productive. And they, my kids are old enough that they had to hear that, like, their mom was going through some stuff too. And like, I get to have a career and care about it too. Yeah. And I get to have a tough time too.
Yeah.
And like, my feelings are also something that gets talked about, like, with us as an organism. I'm not just like, cook in the kitchen, a whore in the bedroom, a maid in the parlor, right? And then a journalist when, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then a journalist when everyone else is asleep.
How are you taking care of yourself? Because you say you're still recovering from that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just as, our families, our organisms, our bodies, it's not like our brain and our nervous system. I mean, it's all connected. So I've had like a lot of chronic back problems throughout my life, from being an athlete as a young woman and a dancer, and so I just started to have terrible back problems and health problems, and like I told you, that hip flexor problem
which I'm having right now too.
Although I'm actually what I did was I just thought, I just get bored to death with occupational therapy. I hate it. And so I said, let me try the hardest thing I can do that will build my core. And, it's not like running or like just wasn't able to do that. So I started riding horses. So I've been riding horses, and I fell, hence this hip flexor injury, and my thumb and like my ear, like everything hurts. I'm like, how did my ear get hit? But my goal is to jump. I want to jump horses.
All right.
And so, what I try to do is like find something that piques my curiosity and then also is going to heal me. Yeah. Because, when people are like, oh, go meditate. I'm like, have you met me? Seriously, my last therapist was like, I give you a lifetime pass. Like, I have never met anyone who has failed at every type of meditation. Yeah. Like, seriously, I was like, I went to like the Maharishi's like main guy, like guru guy, and I was just like,
you're not doing that.
What?
Yeah.
You're just like,
so
how come you have 22 girlfriends like all the rest of them? I'm not buying it. I don't like it. I'm bored. I want to box. I want to ride horses.
You do box, right?
I do box.
Yes, I know that.
I'm not boxing right now because, interestingly enough, most boxers you talk to will say, you think you want to get in the ring because you want to hit. You want to win, you want to fight. But there is an element of every boxer, and I think this is very true of writers and artists too, that you want to get hit. You're in there because you want to grapple. Like there's a certain satisfaction to that kind of danger and also that kind of contact, the oxytocin you get from it. I mean, my husband's really grappling now, like jujitsu, and he's like, it's crazy. Yeah. He's so into it. But I got my teeth. These are all fake.
You got them knocked out?
These are all fake because childhood, orthodonture and abuse and, whatever, my teeth were a wreck. So I finally got myself fake teeth, and then I went and got them knocked sideways. And my dentist was like, please. And I had to get a root canal, all these pretty veneers.
You don't want them, yeah. No.
Oh my gosh. So, and still I have to go back. There's like still a splint back. And so I said, I just lost like that hunger to get hit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I started to be scared.
Yeah.
He said, can you pick something where you don't get hit in the face?
Yes.
And once that's gone, you gotta you gotta back off it because then you've lost the fight.
Exactly.
You lost the fight in you, but I also do archery, so I haven't lost it entirely. And I'm a marksman as well.
Damn.
Yeah.
Don't get on your nerves.
I don't get on my nerves.
It's
true.
We got to wrap up. There's
Yeah.
two things. You mentioned Michael Connelly earlier.
Yes.
He wrote, "What you have here is a real one. Jillian Lauren is fearless and fierce. She has seen what is wrong and stuck her nose into it. What has emerged is a story that transcends a crime story to be a story that threatens social order. Sam Little is the monster and Jillian Lauren is the slayer. She is the one who stuck her nose into it, saw something was not right, was dreadfully wrong, in fact, and did something about it." And I just love that. It's obviously he's a great writer, but it's also...
I cried.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I cried for a good long time.
Yeah.
And I treasure that because I worked with Michael. You know, we did a podcast together, you know, The Women Who Brought Down Sam Little, and it was about Mitzi Roberts and Beth
Yes.
Silverman.
Yes.
That's the detective, the district attorney, and me as the journalist. And so I worked on that with Michael, and you know, we just spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Throughout, and he helped me a great deal. You know, he's a guy you can call and be like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get through this. And I know that he wrote that and it was real.
Yeah. Well,
and it means
yeah.
a lot to me.
It's a beautiful tribute, but I
Yeah.
think it makes it really clear what your mission was and what you accomplished. So I have to...
Thank you. I mean,
Yes.
I hope it's not, you know, accomplished past tense. I hope,
No,
you know,
what you're accomplishing.
always growing,
What you're accomplishing. Yes.
I hope to
yes.
accomplish much more. Of course, you know, it's never enough
Yeah.
for me, you know, but there are enough hours in a day. You know, I mean, I'd stay up all night long and still not be able
Right.
to
And you have to neglect
right
your
all the
family
wrongs.
and neglect yourself.
Exactly.
And
so
yeah.
now we're all coming back to a place of balance, you know.
Yes. Yes.
But it did take, I mean, frankly, as a working mom, you know, it did take me having to stand up for myself and say, I'm sorry that this is disturbing to you. I mean, I took my 10-year-old to the coroner's office to pick up Sam's ashes because he was sick home from school that day. And he's hilarious. He was like, this is real nice, Mom. And I was like, this is my job. If you like shoes...
Yeah,
you know,
right?
then we're
Yeah.
going to go pick up a serial killer's ashes right now,
Yeah.
you know, and otherwise you get your own job and I'll get you some McNuggets on the way home. Okay.
Well, it's a really good point. And, you know, it's not everybody's job, right?
Right.
And certainly is probably not as associated with a mom
Right.
as other jobs are.
Right. Like, how can you be this?
Yeah.
Except then they get into like being like 16
Yeah.
and all the girls think you're cool.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you are cool.
Your mom's cool.
And your
so
mom's
you're
cool.
You guys
I mean,
listen to that.
but you're cool by association because your mom is so cool, right?
Well, I mean,
And your
he's
dad.
kind of cool
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, the girls are like, "Oh, your mom's so cool," and they're all into that '90s eyeliner I still rock.
Yes. Okay, so really quickly,
Yes.
because we're out of time, I want to just talk a little bit about your husband because you said he's about to go on this worldwide tour. Is that right?
Yes, world tour, Weezer. You know, there will be.
And who is your husband?
Oh, my husband is Scott Schreiner, the bass player for the band Weezer.
Yes.
And they are doing an incredible tour this summer. They'll be out with the Smashing Pumpkins in Europe. They are with the Flaming Lips and Dinosaur Jr., like one of my bands I was so into. Like I saw him in Jersey.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited about this tour. And there are going to be giveaways in every city
Yes.
of the book at different bookstores.
Well,
or
and speaking
you can
of
maybe
giveaways,
get tickets.
Yes.
And so just you're going to want to maybe follow my newsletter, and I will let you know all about Behold the Monster events that are happening next to Weezer events and giveaways and fun stuff.
Yep.
Including the
To our
giveaway.
listeners.
Yes.
So for those of you who are watching the podcast, you can see that I'm holding up some really nice merch. It's a tote bag that says Behold the Monster and then the subtitle below it. But it's what's inside that I'm really excited about giving away to you. It's all 4 of Jillian's books. So that's Pretty. That is Everything You Ever Wanted. It is
Some Girls.
Life
in a Harem.
Yes, which is really, really juicy. And then we have her latest book, which is Behold the Monster. And all of these books are amazing. And are they signed?
Yes, they
are all signed. So what? They're all signed. So we're going to have a giveaway. Yeah. On our Instagram.
Bookmarks.
Yes. And so Jillian has a newsletter. The way that you'll be eligible is if you subscribe to her newsletter. She'll tell us who the winner is. And then we will send you this off to you, our listeners. This whole package of signed books from Jillian Lauren.
Yeah. And that is at JillianLauren.com. Oh, and there's a special piece of jewelry in there, and it's actually one of a kind.
Yes. Ooh.
And that's
it's a surprise.
We've never seen it.
Yes. So
and there's new jewelry merch on the website as well. Once
the website is
JillianLauren.com.
JillianLauren.com. On Instagram.
No, that's just my website.
That's your website. But what are you on Instagram?
And on Instagram, Jillian Lauren. TikTok, Jillian Lauren author, and we're going to be building that a lot more and doing more contemporary cases.
Yes.
Because I'm really excited to bring all this knowledge I have into more recent news as well.
Yeah.
And let's see what else. Instagram, Jillian Lauren. We already did that.
X or Twitter,
Jilly Lauren.
Jilly.
Yeah,
Jilly.
I think what I think I canceled that account so many times, so it always has like 3 followers.
but
I just get pissed at Elon Musk like every 3 weeks. And just cancel my account.
I love it.
And then my manager keeps reinstating it.
Yes. There you go.
So become my 4th X follower. She's like, you realize you lost like 26,000 followers. I don't care. I hate him.
You really have to learn how to form an opinion. All right. That is it for us. I added a little bit more time because you were just so fascinating, and I
talk a lot.
No, but I want it. Who has this story, Jillian? Like no one.
I'm the only one in the room.
You're the only one. Thank you for coming and sharing it with us.
Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.